Hello there. Come and join me to finish this game of connections. What do these games have in common? I got it. Balatro features poker, Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers features blackjack, Gambonanza features chess, and Aotenjo features mahjong. These are all roguelike games that have themes of some traditional game. Yippee! And what do these remaining 4 have in common? Of course! The remaining 4 games are all digital games that have inspired a roguelike version of themselves. For example, Prounoun Palace is a roguelike game heavily inspired by Bookworm Adventures. And the other 3 follow the same formula. Nubby's Number Factory takes inspiration from Peggle, Drop Duchy from Tetris, and Tabletop Tavern from Total War. And to be honest, these examples are just a drop in the ocean, because at this point it feels like almost every game and genre is getting the roguelike treatment. From Clash Royale to Minesweeper, from city builders to sports games, from slot machines to calculators. So, why is every game becoming a roguelike? Before we tackle why, I think it is worth looking at how games are being adopted into a roguelike. Let's look at one of the most popular of them all, Balatro. Most people would probably describe Balatro as a poker roguelike, and that makes sense. You are making poker hands, flushes, straights, full house, etc. It uses a standard deck of playing cards. Even the language used in the game, such as chips, ante, stake, they all reference poker. But what if I told you Balatro is not actually a poker roguelike? Let's do an experiment. Imagine let's just remove poker from Balatro. And maybe, let's replace poker cards with mahjong suits instead. So now, instead of pairs, straights, 4 of a kind, you now have things like Chow, Pong, and Kong. While you would have to redesign a huge part of the game, I believe the underlying game would remain almost entirely intact. You will retain stuff like cards that provide benefits via scoring or the economy, shops that sell stuff and economy for the player to manage, scaling difficulty and bosses that need to be overcome, and most importantly, creative synergies and the satisfaction from achieving Ooga Booga Big Number. And what do you know? There is a game out there that fits this exact description of Balatro but mahjong. It's called Aotenjo Infinite Hands. Okay, now let's try the opposite. Let's just retain poker elements and remove the non-poker elements. Well, now there is no more game, because Balatro does not even play remotely similar to poker. The goal and actions of both games are very different. Balatro is a game about discarding cards in order to play poker hands. The goal is to score points. In poker, your actions revolve around betting, calling, raising, and folding. And your goal is to win by having the best hand or convincing your opponents that you do. Again, they are very fundamentally different games. Balatro is a turn-based, push-your-luck, score-based deck-building roguelike game, using the themes of poker. The former is doing the majority of the heavy lifting. I like to think of this as the host and the guest. The host is the core systems, rules, and controls that determines what the game fundamentally is. The guest is the familiar idea that's invited in, to give the game more context or perhaps to enhance its appeal. In Balatro, the score-based deck-building roguelike game is the host, and poker is the guest. And a pretty good one at that. Poker is something many of us are already familiar with, and that helps get people through the door, because it has a wide appeal and many already understand the mechanics of poker, so players can get straight into learning what's unique in Balatro. So, now that we've established the idea of host and guest, let's look at 2 games that take the same base game in very different directions. Aotenjo Infinite Hands and Hellweight are both mahjong-based roguelikes. As mentioned previously, Aotenjo is literally Balatro but mahjong instead of poker. Mahjong is the guest here. The themes of mahjong are used, but the game is not mahjong. Compare that to Hellweight. Note that at the time of recording, this game is not out yet, but I will send an invite to the playtest sometime in May. Hellweight keeps mahjong as the core experience. You are basically playing mahjong, but with a sprinkling of roguelike mechanics that enhance it, but it doesn't change the core gameplay of mahjong. Here's a quote from the developer of Hellweight. If Aotenjo is Balatro but mahjong, then my game is much more mahjong with Balatro elements. Mahjong definitely comes first. My main goal was to keep some of the tension of mahjong. which all of the other Mahjong-based games I've played are missing. In this example, I believe that Mahjong is the host game, while the roguelike is the guest. I find it very interesting that using the same ingredients, Mahjong and roguelike, you can cook up games that feel so different from one another. Both are pretty valid ways to adopt a game into a roguelike. However, I do think that using the board game as a guest is definitely an easier path. It is much easier to feature a game like poker or chess inside of a roguelike than to turn that game into a roguelike. With the former, you are free to make any game, then find a way to dress it up thematically. On the flip side, not every game has the design space to become a roguelike. Take chess. Chess is a very binary game. All the pieces only have one health, which means they die if they're captured. There's no health, damage, or any score values. So it is quite difficult to add the scaling progression that is commonly featured in roguelikes. A chess-based roguelike, Gambonanza, despite emphasizing that it is not chess in the tutorial, is a roguelike that uses chess as a host and roguelike as the guest. Because if you remove all roguelike elements, the game is still chess, just on a smaller scale. Due to it using chess as a host, Gambonanza doesn't have many numerical values to manipulate outside of its economy. I think this restrictiveness has led to 3 problems for me. Too many relics in Gambonanza revolve around the economy. There's a great lack of interconnected synergies. Many of the relics only have one use case. And the game relies heavily on RNG to introduce variety. Now let's compare that to another chess-based roguelike, Shotgun King: The Final Checkmate. I think Shotgun King isn't really trying to make chess into a roguelike, and chess is a guest here, rather than a host. Your actions on a turn are very different from chess. You literally have a shotgun. There are some scalable values in the game, such as shotgun damage, range, angles. The game also features mechanics such as status effects, grenades, healing, all mechanics that exist due to the fact that the host game is not chess. While I'm not saying this game is better than Gambonanza, I do think that Shotgun King is the easier game to design. New mechanics are much easier to add and tweak in this game compared to Gambonanza. And in my opinion, most games, like chess, work better as a guest than a host. Back to the main question, why is every game becoming a roguelike? There are probably plenty of reasons, but I think there are 3 big ones. Firstly, I think a very obvious reason is the audience. There are a lot of people like me that really love roguelikes, and I'm assuming you because you're watching this video, and would try out any roguelike that is overwhelmingly positive on Steam. However, you can argue that you can say that about any game genre. And so that's why I think having a guest is so useful. It's like the featured artist of a song. They can draw in a different audience that might not usually be into roguelikes. Chess, Mahjong, Poker, Blackjack. These games don't just have huge audiences, they have large audiences. For example, Aotenjo, Gambonanza, and Shotgun King have all been featured on YouTube channels that are focused on their respective niches. People watching Mahjong or chess content on YouTube presumably already enjoy these games. So it's a pretty easy way to advertise directly to an interested audience. They are making a roguelike out of this? If I were a dev of one of these games, this is exactly the goal I want people to think when they scroll on Steam, or how I want YouTubers to title their YouTube video. A side note, I think this also applies to games that combine genres. When doing so, you can attract fans from 2 or more genres. Successful examples include Power World and Hi-Fi Rush. Reason number 2. It makes games easier to learn. It's not rocket science. By adopting an existing game, you don't have to teach the player everything from scratch. For example, in Balatro, if you're not already familiar with poker hands, the game can be quite confusing. When I first introduced my partner to Balatro, she had to constantly check the poker hands page just to remember what was a straight, what was a flush, what was a full house, and so on. But if you're already very familiar with poker hands, you already have that knowledge. You can immediately focus on everything else Balatro is adding on top of that foundation. Or for example, in the chess-based roguelikes I've mentioned. Not having to relearn how chess pieces move really reduces a lot of the barrier to entry. In most games, you want the player to be familiar with the core mechanics as quickly as possible, and minimize the time the player is at the "what the f am I looking at" stage. One of the easiest way to achieve that is by borrowing familiar game mechanics. Reason number 3, and I think this might be a hot take, but I believe that it is easier to make something into a roguelike rather than make a game from scratch. Hear me out. So far, all my examples have been non-digital games. like poker, chess, and mahjong. But recently there has been a wave of games that are very clearly inspired from pre-existing digital games, and they have been made into a roguelike. And in all honesty, I'm a bit surprised it hasn't happened earlier. In my opinion as a game dev, I think one of the hardest part of making a game is finding something that's actually fun to do on a second-to-second basis, the core gameplay. And once you figure that out, the world is your oyster. And guess what? By adapting an existing digital game, a lot of the hard work has already been done. You already have the blueprint for what works. The core gameplay loop, the controls, mechanics. And just like when adopting traditional games, you also have a pre-existing target audience. Obviously, turning enjoyable core gameplay into a good roguelike is not trivial, but I think you're already starting with a massive advantage. And the roguelike genre is also a very tried and true format for building progression, replayability, and variety around your core gameplay loop. Unlike traditional game adaptations, in most cases, the existing digital game serves as the host, and the roguelike elements are the guests. For example, let's look at Bookworm Adventures. It is already a very fun and beloved game, still a banger after 20 years. And then, the very smart devs of Prounoun Palace basically took the blueprint of the game and made it into an amazing roguelike. By making it slightly more complex, adding more in-run and out-of-run progression, and there you go, overwhelmingly positive on Steam. As long as the game has good production values, and the roguelike game design is somewhat well made, making well-loved digital games into a roguelike seems to be a very good blueprint for success. I kid you not, here's a formula for making a decently successful roguelike game. Step 1. Pick a beloved single-player game that has design space for being a roguelike. The most obvious form of design space is to be a combat game that has numerical values, a game where you increase your numbers in order to reduce the opponent's numbers. For example, let's say another PopCap game, Plants vs Zombies. Step 2. Make a game with good production values. So things like having consistent art style, a variety of music and sounds where there should be, good UI, a good trailer and Steam page, features that the players expect, for example saving mid-run. Basically, the game needs to not look cheap or like a student project. It needs to match the consumer's expectations. I recommend watching this video by Eastshade Studios on the importance of production values. Step 3. Be good at designing and balancing roguelike structures. Ideally, it should also have some semblance of creativity. Step 4. Step 5. Profit. This might all seem like a joke, but I'm actually only half kidding. And maybe I should continue this exact project I abandoned years ago. And yes, I know there is already a Plants vs Zombies roguelike out there. They just didn't follow step 2 and 3, which in fairness are the hardest steps. In conclusion, why is everything becoming a roguelike? Because there is a core audience for them, the games are easier to learn, and the games are easier to make. I don't think the trend of adapting games into a roguelike will be ending anytime soon. I don't think genre fatigue would really affect the roguelike genre, because to me, rather than a genre, it feels more like a framework, and nobody really gets bored of linear games or session-based games. Sure, some people get tired of open world games, but that's not because of the open world, but rather the uncreative and generic game design that's often associated with open worlds. Anyway, any relatively popular game out there probably already has a roguelike version, and the only reason you don't know about them is because they're probably not very good. Angry Birds, Bejeweled, Plants vs Zombies, Minesweepers, Clash Royale, all these games have a roguelike version. But they failed step 2 or 3 in what I mentioned before, which is they don't have good production values and/or they have bad game design. If you are a dev watching this, struggling for ideas, here are some games from my childhood I would very much like to play as a good roguelike, ideally with acceptable production values. In no particular order, Plants vs Zombies, Clash Royale, Clash of Clans, and Pokemon Battling, specifically the Battle Factory. And also, please do not tell me about PokeRogue. If you enjoy it, I'm very happy for you, but I personally do not enjoy it. And I would like to also believe that there are many Gen Z gamers out there that are just like me, who have nostalgia for these games, and crucially also now disposable income. You know, whatever left after rent. And that's it for today. I hope you guys found it somewhat insightful. What are some games you want to be made into a roguelike? Please let me know down in the comment section below. I apologize for not posting more often, real life has been pretty busy, but hopefully from now on I'll be able to post a bit more regularly. Thank you for watching and goodbye!